That's how we all die.
Okay, so hopefully we are sort of all caught up to speed, because this coming week things are going to explode, and I just wanted everyone to have a very good idea of how it's going to explode, what we can expect, and what witnesses are to come, I guess, because there's still a lot of untold story involved with this right now. So let's go over what we've learned, alright? So the first thing that we've learned is that the credibility of Miss Heard's evidence is absolutely in question, and not only is it in question, but she has done absolutely nothing to provide proof or evidence of the metadata, or that anything is of the actual dates that she's saying that they're from. We've got transient injuries that seem to be there one day, gone the next, moving around her face. It starts out under her eye, ends up on her cheek, and so on. So we've gone into great detail as to why some of that evidence seems to be not credible, and why she might be trying to refuse to participate in the normal course of discovery. And this is relevant because it's not entirely clear how the judge has sanctioned Heard for disobeying court orders to produce this discovery. Now, Depp was asking for one of three solutions in the last motion he put forward. One was to exclude her evidence entirely. Another one was to, I think, reimburse Mr. Depp for the costs of the forensic expert. And I think the last option was to advise the jury that the evidence provided by Miss Heard was not credible. So judging by the way the objections have been inserted during the trial, I'm going to hazard a guess that the judge decided to go with the last option, to advise the jury that Miss Heard's evidence had not been verified. And this also explains objections to, stating words that she said to other people. When you hear Heard say, and I said, and then you hear objection, I think that's the reason that they're objecting, because things that she texted and wrote to her friends and all that sort of thing, it's all on her devices, and she's refused to hand that over. So I think that's what those objections actually might be related to. Now, as far as her dropping Kate Moss's name onto the record, I actually think she went rogue there. I don't think her counsel advised her to do that. I saw Kate Moss on the witness list, and then she wasn't on the witness list, so it seemed to me that both parties agreed not to bring her into it, and then Heard went and dropped her in it anyway. But I don't think Kate Moss is going to be brought into it just because Heard mentioned her name. I think the door that it opened would probably be a history of violence. Well, there could be two doors that open, okay? There could be that Kate Moss comes into it. This might be the smarter move, is to bring Kate Moss in. She can deny that anything ever happened to do with Stairs, with her relationship with Mr. Depp. And then, bam, Amber's, left with egg on her face. I'd probably think that's a better way to go about it. But of course, the other door that it could open is prior domestic violence allegations. And, we know that Amber Heard's trying to keep her prior domestic violence allegations out of it. But by throwing Kate Moss in it, she probably has opened the door for that. I think that that's probably not as smart a move, because they've also got Ellen Barkin, a previous lover, short-term lover of Depp's, to say that he threw a wine bottle. However, perhaps there is merit going down that avenue, because Ellen Barkin can only testifies that a wine bottle was thrown. When she was cross-examined by Miss Wass in the UK trial, she said it wasn't thrown at anybody, and it wasn't thrown at her, and that she was never hit, that she never felt that it was an aggression towards her, and that she'd never seen him hit anybody, she'd never been yelled at by him, and she'd never seen him yell at anybody else. And so, there's pretty kind of empty sort of road there. Whereas with Miss Heard's allegations of prior domestic abuse, she was actually arrested. And it wasn't because someone called the police and said, she's doing this. I think it's because the police spotted her in the airport actually doing the act against her then wife, Tasia Van Ree. So, perhaps there is some merit to going down that way where there's, an actual arrest with Heard, whereas with Depp, there's just this empty allegation that he threw a wine bottle at nothing in particular. So either door is probably equally weighty as far as the jury looking at it is concerned. But I would probably just go down the whole Kate Moss avenue, and, that just makes it nice and clean. End of story. Kate Moss isn't even an issue. And I think that there's more credibility in going down that road because it just makes Amber Heard look like a dickhead. Like, she's the only one that's saying Kate Moss had an issue. This has never been published in any op-eds, newspapers, news reporting. There's no history of it online whatsoever, except for Heard mentioning it in the UK trial. And interestingly, she doesn't even mention Kate Moss when she tells the story back in July 2016, that last deposition she gave before she dropped the charges against Depp, or the filings against Depp. In that deposition, she just says, it's my baby sister, blah, blah, blah. Well, let's have a look at it so you can see what she says. She doesn't mention Kate Moss.
Very dramatic.
Isn't it true, Ms. Heard, that in September of 2015, you punched Johnny Depp in the face with a closed fist?
Mm. I hit Johnny one time when he. Sorry, I'll wait.
No, you answer the question. Please stop whispering because it's distracting over here.
It's your team.
No, I was referring
No, these
to
two.
this actually.
I can't hear them. I hear them.
I can't hear them.
So please answer the question.
Yes or no, did you ever
No.
punch Johnny Depp with a closed fist in the history of your relationship with Johnny?
Answer it however you feel you wish to.
Thank you. One time, Johnny was hitting me, and he was hitting me hard and repeatedly, and I was screaming. Security walks in, and they don't do anything about it. And he makes this motion when Jerry Judge yells "boss," or Sean, I can't remember who it was, and all we had was a little bit of separation, and my sister runs down the stairs. We're on a landing in between two flights of stairs.
Ms. Heard, I must interrupt you,
You
because
can't.
I've
You
asked
can't.
you a yes
Then
or no question.
withdraw your question then because
Ms.
she's
Heard,
answering.
prior to today's date, have you ever hit Johnny Depp?
Answer it however you wish.
352.
You've already asked and she's already answered and you interrupted her.
Ms. Heard, have you ever hit Johnny Depp prior to today?
Objection, vaguest of times.
Hey, everyone on this side of the room, please.
Objection 352. It's not relevant to this domestic violence proceeding.
Overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Answer it however you want to, including the way you were just, if
I'm
you
asking
wish.
for a yes or no answer.
You don't have to answer it the way she wants you to answer it.
He was about to push my sister down the stairs. She was attempting to break us up. I am protective over my baby sister. When he laid hands on her, I don't know what I did, but I know I jumped in between the actions that I saw could lead to a fatal injury to my sister. She was standing on the top of a flight of stairs, and she has never hurt anyone in her life, and she does not deserve to be pushed down the flight of stairs. And it looked like she was about to be. And I would have done what anybody who has a child or a sister would have done. I acted defensively in her life. I saw her standing on top of a flight of stairs and trying to interrupt a fight in between him and I. I don't know what part of my body I put in between me and him and her. But I would have done anything. I would have done anything to prevent her from being pushed down a flight of stairs.
Now, of course, this is also another door, perhaps, that they could have opened here. The way I understand it, they're only allowed to use Miss Heard's 2016 deposition to impeach things that she's saying now. And up until the point that she says Kate Moss's name, she was pretty much saying the same thing that she said in a deposition, albeit with a completely different attitude. So perhaps that's the door that was opened there. That might even be another path, and probably even a better path than the previous two I just mentioned, and that is bringing in front of the jury the complete difference in attitude between Miss Heard back in 2016 when these supposed allegedly violent things happened to her versus the way she's behaving today on the stand. She behaves today as if these things happened to her very recently, whereas when she was deposed back in 2016, she behaves then like, we probably would expect her to behave today, because there's so much time between them. She's had time to heal, time to recover, she's had therapy, and so we're seeing quite the opposite in her attitude. So perhaps they see this as an opportunity to put this in front of the jury, the difference in her attitude between then and now, which is something that we've all noticed because we all watched that deposition back before the UK trial, whereas, the jury obviously hasn't seen what we have seen. Also bear in mind that Heard only released to the public around, I think it was 9%, 7 to 9% of her 2016 deposition to the public. We actually haven't seen the other 90% of her deposition. So there well could be some surprises there, and maybe that's the direction, maybe that's the door that was open there, because we all saw Ben True do the fist pump. Anyway, the incident that Amber Heard is referring to is the staircase incident, and I think that this is going to be a key element in moving forward for her cross-examination for the reasons I've just mentioned, but also because it brings in Whitney's, that's Heard's sister, it brings in Whitney's testimony, which is supporting Heard's testimony. However, Whitney's testimony is also refuted by Whitney's bestie, Jennifer Howell. Now, her statement is very interesting, but it didn't make it into the UK trial. So essentially, Jennifer was watching the UK trial unfold when her name was mentioned. I'm not even sure that it was her name. I think what Whitney said was, I had to move out and stay with my best friend on the floor. And then Jennifer was upset that Whitney had said that because she'd given her a room, and had she known all this other stuff was going on, she also would have got her help. So Jennifer piped up sort of after all of this had unfolded in the UK trial. But she did send through a statement through to Depp's team, and we also got to see a private communique between Whitney and Jennifer when Jennifer was explaining to Whitney that she wasn't going to lie for her. Now, as far as it's hearsay, I think there will be some exclusion made specifically for Jennifer Howell, because it will simply be used to impeach Whitney's testimony. Impeach meaning proving that Whitney's lying, basically. So in the sense that what Whitney's saying on the stand is not what Whitney told her friends, I think that will bring in Jennifer Howell, and that in turn I think will also bring in Whitney's boyfriend at the time, who is also telling the same story as Jennifer Howell with regard to what Whitney had to say about the set of circumstances that she's testifying about. Now, in previous videos, I've been trying to put emphasis on the way Heard's story has changed, and this sort of relates to putting the 2016 deposition in front of the jury. I'm not sure that they'll see it in its entirety, or they might actually when they're deliberating, but certainly not during the trial because they have a time limit. But they will see snippets that Heard's team want them to see, and then they'll see snippets that Depp's team want them to see, but I think they'll be able to view it in its entirety whilst they're deliberating. And the point that I was trying to emphasise is that in 2016, when Heard went to the court for the temporary restraining order, she had 3 allegations. And she had 3 witnesses who saw nothing but knew what Amber had told them. Now, we suspect that they actually helped to cook this whole story up, but beside the point. The point is, they didn't see any abuse actually occur in front of them, whereas pretty much all of Johnny's witnesses have. So we move on from 2016 with only 3 allegations, which were all for like the 6 months prior to their divorce, to the UK trial, which has now turned into 14 allegations. And a lot of people are saying that she didn't make the Australia allegations during the UK trial, but we don't actually know what she said in the UK trial because that portion of her testimony was held in private. We know that there was an SA claim, but we don't know the nature of it. And then we come to the current trial in 2022, and to be honest, I lost count. I think there was more than 20 incidents that she's now reporting. She's taking it right back to, I think she said 2012, and she's giving the impression that from 2012 all the way through 2016 that there was actually no happy times. It was just all abuse all the way through. So, you know, sky's the limit and how many incidents are floating around in that head of hers. And so that brings us back to the relevance of showing the jury the 2016 deposition, so they can see for themselves that she has completely changed her stories. She's put in more detail. Generally, abuse survivors will have more detail closer to when the event actually happens, which is why police like to get the statements out like right away. And so the ability to put the 2016 deposition in front of the jury during deliberation is probably crucial to proving that the act that they're seeing on the stand right now, the act as in the performance that they're seeing on the stand right now, doesn't match the way she responded back in 2016 when all of these feelings and allegations were fresh in her memory. So there you have it. There's 3 doors that could be opened, and I personally think the third door, putting the 2016 deposition in front of the jury, is probably the smartest door to have opened. And I think that while Kate Moss refuting Amber's claims may be beneficial, it's got no mileage. And the same can be said for Amber's previous DV allegations. I'm going to call them allegations because she was arrested and I think the charges were dropped or something along those lines. So she wasn't actually convicted. But we don't know if that's true either. I'm sure some people would have dug it up by now. But we do know in the dog incident in Australia, she told the media that the charges were dropped against her, but that's not true. They were not dropped. She went to court and she received a sentence. So the charges were not dropped. She actually did get charged, convicted, received a sentence for 6 months good behaviour. So because she had the previous DV debacle expunged, according to, I don't know if that's actually her saying or if it's just rumour, then it's probably another like dead end sort of road to take that path. The one that is the open road that leads to a whole bunch more, I think, is getting that deposition in front of the jury in its entirety, because it demonstrates like a whole bunch of things. It demonstrates the anger and the bitterness and the terrible vengeance she had for Depp at that time that she was trying to get the TRO. And it also shows the difference in attitude between, then and now. And it also shows that she's embellishing her stories and adding more and more detail, adding more and more accusations. I mean, it's just a goldmine all by itself. So I think that that's probably the little fist pump that we saw in her opening a door to whatever. That's the door I think that was opened. But I guess we'll see on Monday or Tuesday when Camille Vasquez takes over the cross-examination. I think she's going to totally annihilate pretty much Amber's entire story. We're going to see, I think, a completely different attitude coming out from Amber. I'm not sure it's going to be the same attitude that we saw in the 2016 deposition, but I imagine this is her nature and it's going to be very difficult for her to control it on the stand. But as I said, we just have to wait and see. So to finish up, I'm going to just quickly go through Johnny Depp's witness list because this will sort of hint to us where we're at for the next 2 weeks of the trial, starting Monday. Now, I think Monday, Amber is still going, she's only just started talking about 2015 onwards, the year of 2015 to 2016 before they divorced. So I think she's got that to go on Monday, and then it will be cross-examination. So in the cross-examination, Depp's team will get to call some more witnesses. So we'll just go through the list and see who we've seen so far and who is yet to come. So we have John C. Depp, number one, by in-person testimony. Now, he's already done his in-person testimony. However, Heard's team have put him up as a witness to cross-examine for Heard's testimony. Because, as you know, there's two cases going on. There's Johnny Depp's case and then there's her counterclaim, which is pretty much exactly the same as Depp's case. Like, it's just amazing. You know, she dresses like him when she goes to court. Anything he claims against her, she claims against him. Even in her abuse stories, it's like you can tell that it's her that were doing those things. She's just saying Johnny did this and Johnny did that when it was actually her, because she's actually acting out the aggressive movements. When she says, you know, he hit me, she shows her fist punching. She doesn't do as Depp did, you know, the ducking and the weaving and the bottle flying past his head and all those actions. She does the aggressor actions. So yeah, Johnny Depp is one of her witnesses for her counterclaim. We've heard from Sean Bett. We've heard from Gina Duiders, and here's the thing. Gina didn't say, when the judge asked Gina if she had been watching witness statements, she said she'd watched some snippets, but she didn't say from which trial. She wasn't asked which trial, because a lot of the witness statements from the UK trial were out there in the public domain. I've got the website to Nick Wallace's everything, like the transcripts, opening statements, closing statements, skeleton arguments, and all the additional statements, 7 different additional statements Amber had to submit because she kept screwing up her story and getting proven a liar. This was all out in the public domain already, so I don't know that Gina Duiders was actually kicked off the stand in a fair manner. I mean, we already know it was a lie that Team Heard put in front of the judge to get her excluded. But had she been asked which trial, which, you know, when she said she had seen some of the witness testimonies, she was never asked which trial. And I think had she been asked, she probably would have said the UK trial. Anyway, Stephen Duiders, we've heard from him. Ben King, we've heard from him. His testimony was very interesting, and it looks like there's even more evidence coming out because of Ben. Malcolm Connolly, he's given his testimony. Travis McGibbon, we heard from him by video link. Starling Jenkins has also testified. Dr. David Kipper, he's also testified. Isaac Baruch, oh man, his testimony was bloody awesome. And the Amica cream, oh my god, that thing's never going to die. Kevin Murphy, oh my god, Kevin Murphy, he hasn't been up yet, but have a listen to his testimony. I'm just going to pause reading through the list here because, wow, testimony. Have a listen to this.
And Wooten, second witness statement of Kevin Murphy. I was previously employed by the claimant, Mr. John Christopher Depp II, for nearly 8 years as an estate manager. I confirm that, save where otherwise appears, the facts stated in this witness statement are within my own knowledge and that those facts are true to the best of my knowledge and belief. Where facts are not within my own knowledge, I confirm that they are true to the best of my information and belief, and the source of that information is set out. I make this witness statement in support of the claimant's claim in these proceedings. This is my second witness statement in this claim. I make the statement in response to the disclosure of a document by the defendants on the 14th of June 2020 referred to below. Paragraphs 7 to 9 of my first witness statement, dated 12th of December 2019, addressed Ms. Heard's requests to me to obtain false evidence for proceedings in Australia. I stand by that evidence and make this further statement in order to expand on that issue. My involvement in arrangements for the dogs to travel to Australia. I was involved in the process to ready the dogs for travel to Australia in April 2015, from start to finish. I hired the agency that facilitated the paperwork and scheduled the veterinary work that needed to be accomplished prior to the dogs travelling to Australia. I was also the person that cancelled the contract for services with All Pet Travel, the company dealing with the paperwork, after multiple conversations with Ms. Heard regarding the status of the necessary paperwork and the fact that the paperwork was not going to be completed in time for the dogs to travel to Australia. I refer to the invoice dated 9th of April 2015 from All Pet Travel at page 1 of KM2, which refers to Australia travel planning cancellation, and also a copy of a letter from Miss Debbie Rogers at All Pet Travel dated 16th of June 2020 is enclosed at page 2 of Exhibit KM2, which supports this fact. I began to have concerns in mid to late March 2015 that time constraints were not going to allow the dogs to be vaccinated in time to travel to Australia by mid-April 2015. I expressed those concerns to Ms. Heard in person, by phone and in emails. Ms. Heard asked me on several occasions if there was any other way to get the dogs to Australia. I investigated different options, but they involved allowing the dogs to fly cargo on another flight. Ms. Heard would not allow that, so we ran out of options. At this point, Ms. Heard appeared to accept that there was nothing else that we could do and that the dogs would not be able to travel to Australia in time for her flight. See the emails exchanged between Ms. Heard and I at pages 3 to 8 of Exhibit KM2. I explained to Ms. Heard on several occasions that bringing animals into Australia was like no other country that we had sent the dogs to before, in terms of length and specificity of the paperwork process and mandatory quarantining upon arrival. I also explained to Ms. Heard several times the fact that trying to take the dogs into Australia without completing the mandatory process was illegal and could result in very harsh penalties, including euthanizing the dogs, fines, and potential jail time. Prior to Ms. Heard and Mr. Depp leaving for Australia, I notified Ms. Christy Dombrowski, Mr. Nathan Holmes, Mr. Stephen Duders, Mr. Jerry Judge, Mr. Malcolm Connolly, Mr. Sean Bett, and Mr. Joel Mandel that the dogs were not allowed to be taken to Australia. I further explained that the dogs should not be taken because it would be illegal and that there could be severe penalties. I made a point of discussing this matter because Ms. Heard had brought the dogs into the Bahamas without paperwork and vaccinations in other instances in July 2014, and in knowledge of the risks of doing so. I refer to photograph taken of Boo in July 2014 in the Bahamas at page 9 of Exhibit KM2, which I believe was that occasion. Due to Amber's inconsideration of the proper precautions required, there was a heightened awareness between me, staff, and the business office of proper paperwork being in place for future trips. At no time did I discuss this matter with Mr. Depp because he never wanted the dogs to travel on any occasion as he felt they would have better care in Los Angeles with staff. Upon getting to the morning following Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard's departure for Australia, I was shocked to learn that Ms. Heard had taken the dogs despite our discussions and my warnings of severe legal ramifications. I spoke with Jerry Judge shortly afterwards, who explained that Miss Heard had insisted on bringing them to Australia. At Exhibit KM2, pages 10 to 11, are the messages exchanged between me and Ms. Dombrowski and Mr. Dudas when they learned that Miss Heard had gone to Australia with the dogs. My declaration for the Australia proceedings. As stated at paragraph 9 of my first witness statement, on or about October 2015, Ms. Heard requested that I make a false statement regarding the dog's illegal entrance into Australia. When I expressed that I was extremely uncomfortable with this, Ms. Heard said to me, "Well, I want your help on this. I wouldn't want you to have a problem with your job." It became very apparent to me that Ms. Heard was threatening my job stability unless I cooperated with providing a declaration that supported her false account for the Australia proceedings. Because of this, I felt extreme pressure to cooperate, despite knowing this would involve being untruthful. On October 13, 2015, I signed a declaration for the Australian proceedings that discussed the circumstances in which Ms. Heard brought her and Mr. Depp's dogs into Australia. See Exhibit KM2, pages 12 to 13. This declaration was prepared by Ms. Heard's US lawyer in this matter. That declaration contained statements that were not entirely truthful. It was not true that Ms. Kate James, Ms. Heard's assistant, was responsible for the paperwork and had not completed it. That this was the reason why Ms. Heard travelled with the dogs to Australia without the necessary paperwork. The true position is that I was responsible for the paperwork, which I could not obtain in time, and that Ms. Heard was fully aware of this in advance of travelling to Australia with the dogs. The lawyers with conduct of the matter were Ms. Heard's lawyer in the US, with whom I dealt primarily. Ms. Heard also had Australian counsel at Athurst. I was told by the US and Australian counsel that my statement, in the terms that they had drafted on Ms. Heard's behalf, would be integral to the outcome of the proceedings. I was told that I was going to have to travel to Australia to testify in person on Ms. Heard's behalf. Ms. Heard knew that she was asking me to lie under duress, and from what she said to me, it was clear to me that I was essentially being told by her that my job would be at risk if I did not agree to her demands. I was very relieved that the matter then settled and I was not going to be asked to lie in person in Australia. My attempt to seek legal advice. I was never comfortable with the fact that I had been given a statement that was not entirely truthful, but as long as Miss Heard was still with Mr. Depp, I did not feel able to take steps to remedy this without there being a risk to my job. Around late May 2016, Miss Heard filed for divorce from Mr. Depp. A few weeks later, on June 23, 2016, I retained the services of the law firm Huang Yabra Singh and Mayer LLP, now Helburn May Yabara Gerberg LLP, in order to seek advice on retracting my declaration in the Australian proceedings. I felt I could take this step at this time because Miss Heard no longer had control or influence over my job. This was my attempt to right a wrong. This effort was completely independent of Mr. Depp, and I personally incurred all of the legal costs. Please see the letter from HMYG confirming the time of my instructions enclosed at page 14 of Exhibit KM2. Through HMYG, I then retained an Australian barrister, Robert Rankin, on 14th of July 2016, for specialist advice concerning my potential criminal liability. I sought advice as to the implications in Australia arising from the false statement provided by me in a statutory declaration tendered in criminal proceedings in Queensland, the prospect of avoiding prosecution by making a voluntary disclosure as to the falsity of such statements, and the steps I would need to take to make a voluntary disclosure. I very much wanted to understand the process and to explain the pressure that I had been under to sign a statement that Ms. Heard knew to be false. In August 2016, I resigned from my position with Mr. Depp because I was no longer working and my legal bills were costly. It was no longer financially feasible for me to continue pursuing this matter. Following the proceedings, Ms. Heard continued to travel with her dog and even made a joke of the Australia incident with her caption on social media. Please see photographs at page 15 to 17 of Exhibit KM2. Savannah McMillan. I do not believe that Ms. Heard would have been concerned about the position I was put in and that I was being compelled to lie to the authorities in Australia. I understand that Ms. Heard was prepared to lie directly to the Department of Homeland Security in September 2014 in relation to her assistant, Savannah McMillan. I have seen the letter that was sent to them from Ms. Heard denying that Ms. McMillan was an employee. I understand that this letter was already been disclosed in these proceedings. I enclose examples of text messages and emails at pages 18 to 28 of Exhibit KM2 from between April 2014 to March 2016, to which I was copied where Ms. McMillan is active in the role of Ms. Heard's assistant.
So there you go. Now you know why Kate James is especially pissed at Amber. Now, rumour has it that Kate James has provided a statement to the Australian authorities to defend herself, because that's pretty much who was thrown under the bus regarding the dogs. And I also believe Kevin Murphy is working with the Australian authorities to unravel the whole mess. So there you go. There's a few more fireworks to come from the Australia allegations. So anyway, let's continue with the list and get this over and done with. Who else is on the list? Christian Carina, he's already testified. Christy Dombrowski, that's Depp's sister, she's also testified. Tara Roberts, she's the island estate manager, so check. She's also testified. So Edward White, we've also heard from him. Sam Sarkar is CEO of Infinitum Nile, which I think is one of Johnny Depp's businesses. Paul Bettany. That's going to be an interesting... It's actually hopefully humorous, because the guy has a good sense of humour, although I'm sure he'll take this all very seriously. One of the interesting things I think about Paul Bettany being called is that Amber is using texts between Paul Bettany and Johnny Depp as evidence of abuse against her, but those text messages were never intended for Amber. They were jokes, complaints, back and forth between two friends. They were never intended for Amber. So how they could be abusive towards Amber when they were never meant to be seen by Amber, never meant to be sent to her, is totally beyond me. But that's kind of how she twists everything to make it look like she's a victim. So yeah, I think Paul Bettany's testimony will be explosive. We've also heard from Keenan Wyatt and Jack Wiggum. Not sure who Leonard Damien is. Probably something to do with finance, I guess. We've heard from Robin Baum, and I think, like, we've heard from Kate James, obviously, and Trinity Esparza from The Building. The rest of the list are still on the witness list, although it depends on time as to whether they can come up. But the ones that I would point out is probably Samantha McMillan, who was Heard's personal assistant or makeup artist, I think. Or assistant, I guess, is the word that Amber used when she was shipping her around the world illegally. And Adam Waldman. There's going to be fireworks when Adam Waldman comes up. But of course, that will be in relation to Heard's counterclaim. And of course, last but not least, I will mention Brian Neumeister, because he is going to testify, I'm sure of it, that Miss Heard didn't hand over the devices, so he wasn't able to determine much at all, except that the photos that she gave had absolutely no metadata, or what metadata was provided was all backwards and skew-if. So I'm pretty sure there's going to be some fireworks with that one as well. So hopefully I've given you enough preliminary information about the case and enough information to continue watching the trial from here, whilst having some idea of what the heck is going on and what has happened previously, and even giving you a couple of spoilers about what's to come. If you don't particularly want to watch the trial, then that's okay, because I'm going to continue doing updates and probably even share any revelations that we have along the way. By we, I mean, myself and the other channels that I watch, as well as the Andy Files. I'm sure he's got more. If we're really lucky, we might be able to get some guest speakers to come on and talk about certain things that are happening during the trial. I'd like to get Incredibly Average to come and have a yak with us. That would be nice. But we'll see what we can manage in the meantime. And that's it for this episode. Over and out.